Hey everyone, and welcome back to the History Reader. Hope you're all doing well. In today's video, we're just going to have a little bit of a chat. We're coming up to the end of the year, and so inevitably on BookTube, we're going to start seeing all those wrap-up videos. How many books I read this year, best books, top 10 books, bottom 5 books, and so naturally I got thinking about what I've read this year and what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy, and obviously doing BookTube I had the idea of doing one of these wrap-up videos, and I was thinking about how I wanted to do that and approach it, because there is a trend among some sections of BookTube where the number of books you've read in a year kind of defines what how good of a reader you are, I suppose. There's a status associated with reading over a certain number of books, and I think it's quite damaging to how people approach reading. Personally, myself, I got into, started really reading a lot with the idea that I wanted to read a book a week. And there is a very popular YouTube video. If you search a book a week, you'll find the one. I'm not going to mention it by name. I don't think, and actually, the YouTuber who made that video has subsequently made other videos kind of rejecting the idea of reading a book a week. So, and that's a process that that person has gone through, and it's the same process that I've gone through. I think reading a book a week is important in one aspect, but it's damaging in another aspect, and I think that we should be aware of that. What reading a book a week does, or setting that goal for yourself does, is effectively mean you have to read every day. It's very difficult to get through, unless you're reading 100-page books or 150-page books, it's very difficult to do that without reading every day. And that's the important habit that I think it instills in people. The thing that it does that I think damages people's reading experiences is tying the reading experience to completing books, and that's not, I think, a healthy thing. One, because you can read a book and take a long time to read a book, and just because you haven't finished it in a week doesn't mean that you haven't gained anything from it. Two, it means that you're probably going to limit the types of books that you read to things that fit in a sort of 350 to 400 page range or under, and probably aren't going to be super challenging books, because you need to be sure that you're going to get through it in a week. Otherwise you start to fall behind, and then once you fall behind, it's very difficult to catch up. So it turns reading into this consumption activity where you are just blasting through the books that you're reading, and kind of like binging a TV show. When a new TV show comes out and you don't want to be spoiled, you kind of blast through it so that you've seen all the major plot points, but then you might want to go back later and watch it more fully to fully appreciate it. And I don't think that's a super good way of reading. And the last thing it does is it kind of strips the joy out of it a little bit, particularly when you start to get behind and then you feel like you're a failure because you've set this goal of 52 books in the year, and now you're in week 13, you've read 11 books, and so you, the joy of reading goes. And at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying reading, you're doing it wrong. The point of reading is to enjoy it. It's not to learn. It's not to understand something or have read a bunch of books, or it's to enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, then go and do something else that you enjoy, or figure out why you're not enjoying reading and change so that you do enjoy it, because reading is a beautiful thing and we can expose ourselves to so much awesome stuff and have really cool experiences. But if you're doing it in a way that you're hating it, then you're not going to enjoy it. So I came to this realization towards the end of 2020. For reference, in 2020 I read like over 70 books. I think it ended up being about 78 books or so. But I was going through these things where I was like, actually, for example, I got recommended this book, The Future is History, How Totalitarianism Reclaimed Russia. And I went and got it out of the library. It wasn't this copy, it was a hardcover copy, and so it ran to a larger number of pages. I think that edition was maybe 600 or so. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, I don't know, can I get this done in a week? And so it sat on my desk for a while, for a couple of weeks. And I was nervous to pick it up and commit to it, because if I didn't get it done in a week, I was going to fall behind. And that's madness. Like, when you think about it, that is total madness. For reference, this is one of the best books I've read, sort of in recent memory. And I ended up buying a copy because I wanted to go back to it and enjoy it. But I rushed through it the first time. And that's not great. So when I got towards the end of 2020 and I'd hit that 52 book goal that I had, I started to sort of take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit and picked up different books. One of them being, actually, I went to the bookshop and I was wanting to buy some books. I think I had a voucher. I was wanting to buy some books and I came across this, which is Andrew Roberts' Napoleon the Great. And Napoleon was something that for several years before I'd wanted to learn about. Here in Australia, we don't do, or at least it's not common to do Napoleon or Napoleonic Europe in school, so I'd never learnt about it, and I'd not come across it in the couple of history courses I'd done in my undergrad. But he was someone I wanted to know about, and so I picked up this book, and it's Andrew Roberts' biography of him. This paperback runs to about 750 pages. The other book I picked up is Antony Beevor's The Second World War, which runs to close to 1,950 pages. And you can see, like, as a paperback, it's a very, very thick paperback. And so I had these two books, and I started reading the Napoleon one first, I believe. And suddenly realized, like, hang on, reading longer books is really cool. You get a different reading experience when the book is very, very long, because the author just has more time to develop things and it's not rushing through, and actually things start to make more sense, because you can spend time with different aspects of, say, a person's personality, or with the culture of a certain place in that time, or whatever it is. You can spend time developing those and understanding those things, which you don't get to do in a short book. And so I really enjoyed reading those two really long books, and they took me probably a month each, and that felt freeing. And so when I came into 2020, my goal was to read every day, or as close to every day as possible, and to read books that I really, really enjoyed reading. And so that meant longer books. And so I think I said when I came to 2020, when I meant when I came into 2021. And so I picked up a bunch of books that I probably wouldn't have read in 2020. I started the year with Richard Evans' The Coming of the Third Reich, and then I read The Third Reich in Power and The Third Reich at War, all in the first few weeks of 2021, and really enjoyed them. And like, some of those they're longer books. I had time off work, so I was reading a lot. But then throughout 2021, I read a bunch of other longer books, things like Stalin by Stephen Kotkin. I read the first 2 volumes of that. I read Frederick Loggeval's JFK. This is volume 1 of what I think is going to be a 2-volume biography. And you can see that they're big books. I read Castles of Steel. It was one of my favorites from the year, Castles of Steel by Robert K. Massey, which again is a 700 plus page book. There's a pattern here. Another one that ended up being my absolute favorite book of the year was Are You, We, Them, Journeys Beyond Evil, The Desk Killers in History and Today by Dan Gretton, which is a hefty book. And it's a slow book, and he spends time sitting with ideas, and he's not just giving you narrative, he's exploring things in different ways. He explores in 2 or 3 different ways. I've gone back and read passages of the book that are sort of a few pages long where he's exploring an idea. And there's joy in that. You don't get that in short books. I enjoy the longer book experience. Some people enjoy reading shorter books, and that's fine. But I think that the realization I came to is that you should read books that you enjoy reading first and foremost, and rather than seeing reading as a sort of tick box sort of exercise where you want to get through X number of books or these particular books, you want to enjoy the process of reading. And when you're sitting there and reading, you want to be engaged and having fun with it. Now, obviously, at times, particularly if you're reading history, the subject matter may not be fun. It may, if you're reading about the Holocaust, you're not going to be in a happy mood when you're reading those things. But there is an enjoyment that you get from reading good books that you enjoy reading, that you like reading. And so that has been my biggest takeaway from this year. I thought about pulling out some of my highlights, and I actually just have. Are You, We, Them by Dan Gretton is definitely the number 1 book I read this year. What he does is explore this idea of desk killers, these people who commit murder, but through their everyday jobs, and they never see the murder necessarily, but psychologically they must know it happens, and they must know that they contribute to it. And so he explores this idea, and he explores in a very interesting way, particularly through the first part of the subtitle is Journeys Beyond Evil, and that journeys part is very literal, in that he goes to the places where these people worked, and then also the places where the killings took place. So he goes to Berlin and looks at where people like Albert Speer would have worked, and then he travels from Berlin to places like Auschwitz, and along those journeys he explores the ideas of what happened and why they happened. So that is one of the highlights. I also really enjoyed reading Stalin by Stephen Kotkin. It is a very tough book. It's very challenging, but I enjoyed that challenge. He writes in a very interesting way, a very different way from anything I've read before, and so it really pushed me in terms of my ability to comprehend what he was writing. And then I really, really enjoyed Castles of Steel and Dreadnought by Robert K. Massey, looking at really the Edwardian and then, or Victorian into Edwardian, and then First World War Royal Navy. And that subject matter is just fascinating to me, and I really, really enjoyed reading that subject matter. And I'm going to go into 2022 looking for some more books on that. Other than that, like, I read a lot of books across a range of topics, history being the main one, obviously. But I found the thing that kept me going, and the thing that probably drove the success that I had with reading this year, was reading 50 pages a day. And that number can be anything. You can set it at 10, you can set it at 15, 30, if you have lots of time, at 100 pages a day. But trying as best as I could to keep consistent with that. And I didn't read 50 pages every day. There were days where I would read none. There'd be days when I'd read 25 or 20. But it was I always sort of went into the day with the goal of reading 50 pages of whatever book I was reading at that time, or a combination of different books, and getting through 50 pages. And I really, really enjoyed reading because of that, because it became a part of my everyday, and creating the space within the day. After dinner is when I tend to read, so I have dinner, clean up and everything, and then spend an hour and a half, 2 hours reading. And that's just my space for reading. And that really made 2021 the best reading year I've ever had. And hopefully 2022 will be better. I'll do another video about what my plans are for 2022. I'm starting to think about what those plans are going to be. I want to explore some different topics. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I've got to head off, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.